Welcome to the What If audio experience. We're taking a real look inside what it means to be successful in today's society, from entrepreneurship to family, from victories to failures. We're covering all topics of what it looks like to create your own definition of success. Our mission is to bridge the gap from where you are to where you want to be. We may not have all the answers, but the one thing we know for sure, it all starts with you.
What is going on? And welcome back to the What If audio experience. I'm Jeffrey Jensen here with my brother Jason, and this is episode number 5. Today, we've got a phenomenal guest, someone that Jason and I have called a friend for probably the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah,
and I'm super excited to dive into his story. But without further ado, Mr. Jeffrey Martin Smith.
Gentlemen, good
How
to
are
see
you doing, sir?
Good to see you.
It's been too long, my
It
friends.
has been a long time.
Just busy.
Great
all
thing
the
of this
time.
podcast is it forces us to call in friend favors and say, hey, you got to come and get on the show. And
Absolutely.
now we get to see it. It's
I
been a
saw
long
our
time.
buddy Richard Bischoff on here not too long
yeah.
ago.
Yeah. It's been awesome. We appreciate you coming on. And pretty much every person we have on, we like to just dive right in, get into the nitty gritty of why, in our opinion, you're on the show. I mean, you have an incredible story. We met you, I don't know, what, 5 or 6 years ago, I think.
I was
I
trying
think
to
it's
think
probably
about that.
pushing 6
yeah,
now.
about
six
Yeah.
6 years. Time goes by so fast now, but met you a long time ago, and it's been super cool to see. You know, I know when I first met you, definitely looked up to the success you had in the traditional business world. Then we worked together with direct sales and that side of things, and when everyone kind of parted ways with that, it's been so exciting to see you make a huge transition and now have a ton of success in what you're doing. So the first question we asked people was like, hey, give us a story, give us the A to Z to what got you. You know, you've been in business a long time. So like a
from
lot
my
of
teens, yeah,
For
pretty
sure.
much.
And go back, like, give me that origin story.
Okay.
Like, what were you like as a kid? Like, did you always have entrepreneurial tendencies? Like, were you selling like lemonade? Like,
Yeah.
go deep.
Okay. Yeah, I've been just attracted to entrepreneurism, I think, even before I knew what it was. You know, as a kid, I was working on farms. I was going door to door, knocking on people's houses, asking them to shovel their driveways. I'm originally from upstate New York, so not down here in the
Nice
South.
and
but-
chilly.
Yeah.
Snow.
But then I remember I got my first paper route, and it was like 30 customers, but I lived on the side of a mountain. So like, and every house was almost probably about half a mile apart. So I built some strong legs over the couple of years. And then I kind of took over this other kid's territory because it wasn't enough.
yeah.
So I upgraded it to 70. But even doing things back then to like increase my profit margin, which now in my adulthood was completely wrong. You know, I used to ride my bike to the store and put a quarter in and take the whole stack of papers. And I was slowly canceling customers over time because in my head, I'm like, hey, if I don't have to pay for the paper, I get to keep the full thing. So I ended up being like 13 years old, making like $100 a week in like,
Yeah.
1985, so I guess it would be 88. I'm not that old, but yeah, I just, always just pushed hard, never didn't work, but the thing was, I think with a lot of entrepreneurs is you want to work for yourself. And I got fired from every traditional job I ever had because
Yeah.
I just, even at a young age, I'm like, how dare you tell me when I can go eat lunch, or how dare you can tell me I can have 10-minute break? You know what I mean? I was like,
Sure.
to me, like, it's just weird. Like in high school, you're like, oh, you read about slavery and stuff. And I'm like, that's paid slavery. You know what I mean? If they have complete control over you. So that whole concept just never sat well with me. So where I kind of transitioned into what I'm doing now in a weird sort of way, full circle. When I was around 14, I started interning at a radio station because I always loved radio. I love production, all things audio and everything. I just loved it. And I didn't just love listening to the radio. I loved the stuff in between, like
Sure.
the imaging and the sound effects and the funny things on the morning shows. So my aunt worked at a radio station, and I was able to get in there at 14, and I just started out putting like bumper stickers on water bottles to give away at concerts and just stupid stuff. And then one day, the guy that ran the Howard Stern show, he board opped it. He just kept coming in to work drunk because he'd party all night and then like come in just hammered. So they fired him. and they stuck me in there at 14 running it.
That's crazy.
And the funny
That's
thing
awesome.
is they just kind of forgot that I was in there because, you know, Howard Stern went from 6 to 10. So I would board op it, and then like no one would come in till after 10. So they didn't realize, they just knew the show was on the air. They didn't realize who was doing it. So I was doing that and then going to high school. So like, and then that just kind of transitioned over time. You know, I did that for a couple of years, and then almost similar situation. They fired the afternoon guy. They had been letting me do some weekend shifts and overnights, and then I filled in for the afternoon, and then I just kind of stayed there. And then it was crazy because, you know, I was pretty smart in school. I was going to go to school for engineering, and I just knew that wasn't the thing I wanted to do.
Sure.
You know, I was you know, just not happy with that outlook. And then another station actually saw my potential, and they're like, "Hey, we want to hire you." And I was like, I got to go to college. And they're like, "We'll pay for your college for recording school if you want to go." So I
That's
went.
awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, like hearing you share this and being an entrepreneur your whole life. I don't know if you have a great way of explaining it, but you hear even at the age of 12 that you just knew. Like, I have friends of mine that I won't see for a long time, and I'll film it on life and what we're doing and just the ups and downs and the craziness. And they're kind of like, man, like that sounds miserable, or why do you
Yeah.
put yourself through that? And there's been times where like, I almost wish I didn't have this internal feeling. Like, I don't even know what to call it, but it's almost like you can't breathe. And
It's almost like an anxiety that I'm not
100%.
doing what I should be doing.
And it's like we were the same way. I mean, at 9 and 10 years old, selling tea and golf balls on a golf course, you don't really understand it then. And
You think it's normal.
yeah, I'm excited now that I feel like there's been a big shift in entrepreneurship in a positive and a negative way, where a lot of people, like, that's what they want now. But I feel like it's at least being cultivated a little bit better, to where back then it was almost someone like you who would get fired, or, you know, wanted to just do these things or didn't want their lunch break. It probably looked more like rebellion, like,
Yeah.
oh, like it doesn't make sense why you're acting like this. But it's just this internal feeling that it's like, yeah, you can't explain it. It just, you know, it's not right.
Yeah.
And I felt that in
absolutely.
everything that I did for a job. It's like I'd get in and I'd work hard, and I always had this 4 to 6 month buffer. Like, for the first 4 months, I was good because it was
Because
new.
it
I
feels
was
good.
learning.
You
It
got
feels
a
good.
job, and you're like, oh, I
Yeah.
got safety and security. But then
It
you-
just flips.
Yeah, at
it's like
certain
all of a
point,
sudden
you're like,
you just
"Ugh."
can't even, you can't breathe. You're like, what am I doing?
Exactly.
And it's so hard to explain if you don't have that from a young age. So,
And like you said, I think in the past it was frowned upon. You know,
Yeah.
like, I mean, I'm 44, so I mean, I was still in that tail end of you know, you grow up, you go to college, you get married, you get a solid job for your family, and you stick it out and hopefully get a pension or something at the end.
yeah.
You know, no matter how hard it is, no matter what you do, you just suck it up. And you know, it just shows the generation before us how tough they were, like, because you feel it now. You're like, oh my God, you know. And you know, people, you know, are softer nowadays, you know. But
Sure.
with that though, I think it did come the embracement of entrepreneurship. You know, the internet, everything like that makes it a lot easier, and it's just more acceptable. Where before, you know, oh my God, that guy's trying to do his own thing. How stupid is he?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, your generation, that was like a big no-no.
Yeah.
That was like, for me, so I'm 31, even when I dropped out of college, it
Mhm.
was still like taboo. It was still like, wow, what are you doing?
Yeah, you're gonna
So,
have a
but I
crappy
can't
life.
imagine what that was like, you know, 10
10
12,
years.
13
And that's
years
the whole
before
thing
that.
is the way technology is. And the thing is, you know, you used to think advancements were hundreds years, you know, 1800s, 1900s, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But now every 5 years, it's like a new, you know, way of looking at things. Like, you know, I'm 44. I feel really young. I'm pretty hip to everything. But like millennial kids baffle me. Like, you know, I'm like, what? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you know, like you said with college, you know, it was frowned upon. Like if you didn't go to college, you were going to be delivering pizza, or you'd be like, you know, doing something, you know, at 40. And it's not the case. And you know, people ask me sometimes like what I think about college. I don't believe in it really anymore,
Yeah.
because the information that's out there, you can really, you know, I think talent trumps, you know, college education. Now, if you're going to be a doctor, or a nurse, or veterinarian, or something that's
Someone that needs
certified,
it. Something you
yeah,
have to have
for
that
sure.
degree
But,
in, 100%.
you know,
Yeah, the notion of everyone just needs to go get a piece of paper
No.
is ridiculous.
I mean, you could basically get the knowledge of a business management degree by going to Barnes and Noble or going on
YouTube.
Google or YouTube. You know what I mean?
I have a business management degree,
And it's
and I went, and I mean, I will say too, there's times I wish I could go back with the mindset I have now, because I wonder would I extract more than I did, because
Exactly.
I also hate how our society, it's so pressured, it's so pushed. I was talking about this with my wife's family the other day. And it's like, I wish we would push kids to take a gap year. Like, go
Mhm.
figure it out before you make one of the biggest financial commitments in your entire life to go to school. But it's also for me, like, I was always school smart and I love business, but every single class, you're just looking to get the A. At
And
least for me, it
my
was like,
daughter right now, she's turning 17 and she's super brilliant, and she
Yeah.
has the opportunity to get out of 11th grade. And she's like, I don't know if I want to. I'm like, get out of 11th grade, take a year off, and then go back with everybody else at the normal time. You didn't miss any time,
for sure.
but it gives your brain a rest. Like, I mean, you just kindergarten through 12th, you just did that for
Yeah.
how many years? 13 years?
You figure
you
out
know-
what you like too in the world. You get
Yeah.
out there and actually experience stuff and not just live through social media of what.
And it's hard to make that decision at 17, 18.
So
like,
hard.
you know, I didn't know. I'm such a different man now than I was when I was 17, 18, you know?
100%.
And it's like,
it's like every 3 years I change.
yeah. Because you
Yeah.
figure the life expectancy now, I mean, a kid who's 17 is probably going to live to 90 or 100.
For sure.
So you're going to make a decision at 17 years old that's going to last you the next 70 years? Like, that's
Yeah.
crazy.
I feel like too, if you look at our society, I think people are mentally younger at that age than before. And let me explain, because I don't know if that makes sense, but a 17-year-old 40 years ago, I think was a lot older
Yeah.
and their daily
Oh, you're
habits.
getting, you're getting up
now.
at 5. You're,
Yeah.
working the fields. Like,
Even
yeah.
I feel like I'm 20. I just turned 29. I feel like I've seen that shift a little bit to where, like, we have a 17-year-old brother. It's just different. Like, think about what's changed in our world from 2010 to 2019 for
Yeah.
technology and social media. I'm so thankful I didn't have to go through the emotional roller coaster of having social media in high school. It's like, I feel like younger people are so far advanced in technology, but are also being set back in
Set back.
EQ, their emotional quotient. It's just like,
Yeah,
it's just a different world. The world's never been closer, but yet farther away.
exactly.
It's crazy.
And the other
what's
thing is,
happening.
at 17 years old, I mean, you can't vote, but you can choose to take out a $300,000 loan for the rest of your life on college. Like, the whole thing is, what if that 17-year-old kid wanted to start a business? They won't give him a $400,000 loan.
Yeah, college
they'll-
loans are the biggest racket
It's
in
a
the world.
scam.
I mean,
Even
it's
to the point
insane.
where you can't not get rid of them via bankruptcy because they filed it, so you can't. You know what I mean? Like, you can buy $1 million home and just wipe your hands away with it in a bankruptcy, but you can't do it to the college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
It's
shows
crazy.
how much of a scam it is.
Oh,
You know?
for sure. When we dove real deep into that, and my shortened version was, hey, if you need a degree, like you said, a doctor, lawyer, teacher, makes a ton of sense. If you can get school paid for free, why not go? Great opportunity.
And that's the whole thing is, like, I got to go for free, which I was blessed to do so, but every single thing I learned is obsolete.
Yeah.
You know, if you're taking any sort of technology thing, you're going to have to relearn your stuff year after year after year
yeah.
after year.
Yeah, we were talking about at that young age and even at an older age, but man, 17 to like 25 to even 29, it's like, go taste, go out there and figure out, like, try and go work for free. I mean, like, you know, your daughter still lives at home, I'm assuming. It's
Yeah.
like she lives with mom and dad, like, go get a free internship and just figure out, do I even like anything?
Anything, yeah.
And
make
then
more
that could be
choices.
your direction. So I think, you know, young people, that would be my encouragement is just try. Like, this is the time. Like, you literally, I mean, even into your 40s, like, you can always start over.
can
Like you said,
reinvent. I mean, Colonel
Yeah.
Sanders made, like, you know, Kentucky Fried Chicken at like 68 years
Yeah.
old, man. Like,
Even
it's
Warren
never
Buffett.
too late.
Warren Buffett, you look at his money trajectory, his wealth, majority of his wealth came after 65. It just,
And you know how he started as a kid? Like, he bought like some pinball and arcade machines and he put them in like little places, and then he
Yeah.
just kept reinvesting, and that's how he originally started out. And then, you know, he bought his first house, I think, right out of high school, like
crazy.
right after,
I think
and
still
he
lives
just
there.
saved. He still lives
I
there,
think
yeah.
he lives in the same house forever. And it's too to have this age, like I just turned 29, 31, 44. We all met 5 or 6 years ago. I know how much I've developed and grown as a person.
Yeah.
And I would imagine you guys have as well. But in the same sense, as far as like, how do you feel? I mean, I don't really feel any different.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, development, growth, that's the whole objective to success, in my opinion, has occurred. But from like is it too late? Like at 21, 29, or like you said, 44,
Yeah.
people think,
I
I
still
don't
feel
have time.
21.
I don't have,
Even though I found a lot of success in the last couple of years, I mean, I still think of stuff all the time.
you're just
You know,
getting started.
I'm getting ready to launch my woodworking business.
Yeah, we're gonna dive into that.
Yeah.
Save that.
We'll save that.
Yeah. Well, let's pick up from where we left off then. So you're in the radio business. What were we at? 17, 18, you were saying?
Yeah,
You're
right
working
around
that.
18.
So where from there did we go? Are you going to school and
Yeah, well, I was going to school, and then actually I started, club DJing, and I was doing stuff all over the country. I actually started working with MTV, and I would go away with them, and then come back for school, and it was
I'm sure
craziness.
those are some crazy stories.
Yeah, it was just really weird. Like that part is like a blur, because it was just a lot of fun. I mean, it's hard to be 18 and be traveling the country, like doing club gigs and doing all sorts of stuff. And then it's so funny because my kids, I tell them, I was like, I know I look like an old wood shop teacher now, but like I was a nasty club DJ back in the day. After that, I bounced around to different radio stations, and I was doing a lot of imaging and stuff like that. But I never was the voice guy. I would work with the voice guy from the station, and I loved that. And I actually had a really high voice and stuff. Like I never thought I was going to be the voice guy. And but then my dad moved down here to retire, and we used to vacation, in Myrtle Beach area all the time. And he got cancer, so I stopped, and I came and I took a job at KZQ here to be down with my family. So then I did that for like 4 or 5 years, and then he got better, beat the cancer, and then I ended up leaving, and I moved back up north, and I worked with Dee Snider from Twisted Sister on his morning show up in Hartford, Connecticut. So, and then I got married, and then a year later I got divorced, and I came back down because KZQ actually offered me a ton of money to come back. And by then my 2 sisters had moved here, and then I was like, yeah, let's just go back with the family. So then I worked KZQ probably 3 more years, and I got fired. And I was like, it was weird because radio, I was a superstar, man. I was like, how do I get fired? But the GM at the time was just super Southern, and and he just kept saying I kept pushing the envelope. But when I got fired, I was the #1 afternoon show in Myrtle Beach, like the highest numbers they ever had on KZQ. And he really fired me at the height, and it was just more personality. It wasn't,
You were just too early.
The thing is to the temperament of him, I was too early, but the listeners got it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And the funny thing is after they fired me, they still kept doing all my bits. Everything that they fired me for, they continued with, which was weird.
Do you think it was like just getting a little bit deeper in this for anyone listening that's ever maybe gone through something similar to where they excelled and then got fired? Was it a behind the scenes, like were you kind of pushing the envelope and having this vision for the company and wanting to grow and wanting to do these things that you saw were creating results, and he was just kind of stuck in his old ways? Was there any personal bit behind it where
I think there was a generation gap, and because at the time when I worked there, they ran KZQ, Wave 104, the Light and Easy station, and RNN, which he was probably perfect for RNN and all the other things, but a cutting edge rock station, I knew the demo. I was the demo at that time. You know what I mean? So like I knew things, and I would put topical things in there. And for instance, one of the things I got in trouble for was it was right when they first cloned that sheep, that very first sheep or whatever. So then I did a bit on the air about cloning the perfect woman, and it mutated, and it just became a boob with crab legs that ran through the city and made terror. So he called me in his office, and he's like, "What is this thing with a tit with crab legs?" And he's yelling at me. Like it was literally like pulling me the principal's office every day. And he goes, "My son was in the car, and he heard that." And I was like, "How old's your son?" And he's like, 8 years old. And I was like, "Our demo's 18 to 34. That's just bad parenting on your part." And
so that was
snowball
effect.
So it was things like that, and I think humor a lot of times gets me in trouble. I remember one time I was interviewing for a job after KZQ. It was Hot 100 that was here, and they wanted to hire me as the production director. So the guy at the time, I don't even know where he is now, but he was just one of those real like philosopher type dudes. And, you know, he was pulling that stuff. He's like, so if you weren't you, what would you say about yourself? And like all those type questions, just real kind of dicky, you know?
Yeah.
And I had the goods. I was the best person in town to do the job. You know what I mean? Like I worked major markets and everything else. And, you know, this is like market 100 and something, you know, so he was just putting me through the ringer to do it. So then, so he's like, okay. And he looked at my stuff, listened to my demo, and then he called me back the next day and he's like, everything's great. Everything's phenomenal. He's like, just some people say it takes you some time to, you know, deliver the product or on time or something like that. So we had this good rapport and he was laughing and funny with me. And I was like, I just looked at him across the table. And I was like, did you tell Leonardo da Vinci to hurry the F up? and he just stared at me like I was the biggest ass, but I still got the job. You know what I mean? But it was stuff like that,
Yeah.
you know, and you know, that ended up being a cool job. But then, you know, after that, I was just like, I'm done with radio, man. It got too corporate. And, you know, it got to the point where like, you know, it's such a big illusion. Like radio now, a lot of the stations, it's like one or two guys on like 5 stations. They voice track all of it. It's all run by a computer.
Yeah.
That's why you hear dead air all the time where it goes off, or they'll be like, you know, here's the latest from Metallica. And then like Led Zeppelin comes on. It's because the guy's not in there,
Yeah.
you know,
That's crazy.
and it got to the point where it made me sad because, you know, we did this huge, like nationwide, it made it seem like we were giving away a car here in Myrtle Beach, but it wasn't. It was one car over like 1,000 stations. And what they did is when they finally picked the winner, they recorded at the station where the lady actually won. Then they send us the audio and it's like, oh my God, thank you. You know, and it was like, what's your number one station? And they had her read every single station to get the car. So it was like total lie, you know, and it's so crap. And I was just like, I'm done with radio, man.
So you leave radio, and
Yeah.
then is that where you kind of picked back up on the entrepreneurial stuff? You started your business, or
The next thing was a company I did called Myrtle Vegas. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to go in production for myself. But then, you know, internet was still in its infancy, you know, and I don't even know when that was. Maybe around 2000, 2001 maybe. And so I was doing video production and audio production. And it did really well, but like you couldn't get like national clients real easy from here. You're battling big companies like Brandon Advertising and stuff like that. But I actually did really well. I picked up a lot of the Burroughs and Chapin Company stuff, Broadway at the Beach. I produced a television show called Very Broadway Christmas. The Attic was still there at the time. I did a version of like TRL, which I hosted, called ARL. And
I would love to see that footage if that's
but the
out there
thing
anywhere.
was, how I started Myrtle Vegas was, and it's just in business, you got to have confidence in yourself. So I wrote down a bunch of companies and I'm like, Burroughs and Chapin was like one of the top ones on there. So I went and pitched in the idea for ARL, you know, Attic Request Live, you know,
Yeah.
it's a total knockoff of the thing. And they loved it. And they're like, well, what's it going to take to get this done? And I'm like, it's going to take, you know, $45,000 and I'll need half up front for production costs. I didn't own a freaking camera. I didn't own any piece of equipment. They wrote me a check for $20,000. I went out and bought all the equipment and then produced the
That's
TV
awesome.
show. And they ran it for 3 more seasons. So, you know what I mean?
That's
But
amazing.
I had terrible credit. I had Burroughs and Chapin literally fund my whole company
Yeah.
of Myrtle Vegas. I got a space, a studio space, you know, green
so
room.
let's dive into that for a second, just to bring some value. So I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there that they have these ideas, but then they're just like, man, I don't have the money, or you know, I don't have a way to get this done. But honestly, like if you're really wanting to have something happen,
Yeah.
there's always a way to figure it out.
An idea is a blank check. You know, if you really think about it, you know, an idea is a blank check. Now you got to deliver. You can't be a scam artist and be like, hey, give me $40,000 and not deliver. But I knew I could deliver. I just didn't have the means or the equipment to do it. You know, I had just like consumer grade stuff. I didn't have,
For sure.
but with that consumer grade stuff, I shot a heck of a demo that won them over.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the whole thing, is just kind of having the guts or balls to do
to
it.
go for it. It's like, yeah, I think that's a great point here is, especially nowadays, it's just, there's so many people with great ideas.
Mhm.
It's just such a lack of execution. And I even say with us, I know us being brothers and just hanging out all the time and talking ideas over and over and over. It's sometimes I feel like what people do is when they get to a point where they're unsatisfied with where they're at, it's almost a quick fix to come up with all these ideas.
But
it's like we used to
it's
see
easier to stay than
that's right.
Put
It's
them in
almost
motion.
like we saw a lot of time with direct sales and looking back and kind of reminiscing on that time and trying to figure out what I've learned so much. And one of the big things was it was similar with personal development. You had people that, you know, you're trying to teach them how to go out and have success, but they could get that fixed by just listening and consuming and taking in that personal, hey, here's how to do it. And it's like you go up to these events or trainings and you get it and you feel great for the day and it lasts for a week and then nothing ever changed. Or like, oh, I'm unsatisfied with my job. Man, how cool would it be to start this business? And you take the next 90 days and you tell everyone about it and you think about it and here's what we would need and boom, boom, boom. But you just never execute. And it just becomes this hamster wheel that I feel like people stay in the same jobs their entire life.
And that's why some of the personal development stuff is so lucrative, is because people get addicted to that feeling.
Yeah.
And then they're like, yeah, I'm going to do this. Yeah. And then it weans. And then they go back for more. And then they go, you know, and that's the whole thing with it. And it's better to be doing something than not doing something. But at some time, you got to pull the trigger.
Have to.
And put a plan in action, you know, and, you know, so that was the biggest thing. And so moving on with the Myrtle Vegas thing, you know, it lasted for a little while. It was so tough trying to be the creative guy and then chasing the money, you know, and that's what got to me. And I was like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. And you know, at the time, you know, the attic was getting ready to shut down and I saw opportunity. I was like, you know what, I'm going to go into a real regular business. You know, the attic was still packed all the way to the end. So was the pavilion. It was packed. Yeah. So there was a hole in the market. So I went 3 blocks up the street and I opened up Karma, the teen nightclub. And what I did there was I did everything that I wanted to implement at the attic that Burroughs and Chapin wouldn't let me do. And so, you know, similar to my style with the attic, there was people that, the only reason we named it Karma is because there was a club that was going to open there called Karma. They already bought, you know, $50,000 sign. They already did all the renovations. Only one problem was the building that Karma was in was originally the Shark Club, and they got in trouble for serving underage. So they did like a 10-year, you can't get a liquor license at that thing. So the people that we got Karma from, they had done all this work without checking and then realized we can't open our nightclub. We didn't need a liquor license to do Karma, you know? So we went in there and they're like, okay, we'll give you everything for $50,000. And we're like, no. And they were like, what? Because we knew we had them, you know what I mean? And it's not, we were being mean to those people. Hey, you should check, do your homework, you know? So then we're like, okay, we'll do $40,000. And then they're like, no. And then like 2 weeks later, you know, they were going to have to pay another $8,000 in rent. So they call us back. They're like, okay, $40,000. And we're like, okay, we'll give you $10,000 now. Let us open the club and we'll give you $30,000 after spring break. So we pulled the Burroughs and Chapin thing again. Yeah. So we gave the money, me and my business partner, and, you know, we opened up and the first week was slow, but then the word got out. We literally paid off the whole thing within 2 weeks.
That's crazy.
And then we had it for 11 years.
And that just shows so much too to get into, which even you, I was gonna say, to get into the financial side of things, you guys just figure it out. But so many people, I think, when they want to start a business or they have these big ideas and they don't have the money, they get stuck there. Like, I don't know what to do. There's this whole story of like
my credit score at that time was probably like 510. You know what I mean? So none of it was done on credit.
So two outlets there. One is something like you guys did, to where like this is giving advice to people that get stuck. I'm like, oh, if I had the money, this is what I would do. Well, one, go out and create that opportunity. And you did so in a way where you didn't necessarily need to do it, but from past experience of when opportunity presents itself, you figure it out.
Because the thing is, there's people out there that tried their dream. They did it wrong. And it's not that you should benefit from it. In a way, you're bailing them out. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, I mean, they could have been, you know, if we didn't take it and they had to pay the remainder of their 3-year contract, I mean, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. Yeah. So, like, I don't feel bad about it. I feel bad that any business that fails, but there's opportunity in failure. You know what I mean? Somebody, they say one man's garbage is another man's treasure. One man's failure is another guy's opportunity.
Sure. And that's the message here is like, hey, if that is you and you want to find a way to do your own business, it's either take the slow approach and get your money right so that when opportunity presents itself, you can jump on it, or when opportunity presents itself, be willing to go all in. Because at the same time, like you're saying, yes, you got a great quote unquote deal, but you put yourself on the line.
Oh,
like
yeah.
if you went in and said, hey, we're going to give you 10K and we'll give you the other 30 after spring break. Well, if you didn't have that 40 to begin with, and after spring break, you had to give that 30 grand. Like you said, you believed in yourself.
Yeah.
You went for it. You went all in. It was
But
similar
you
to
have
what
to
we
deliver.
did here.
Yeah,
you have to deliver.
That's the whole thing. Like the Burrows and Chapin thing. Like I had to produce that show, and it had to be to the quality that I promised.
Had to work.
And I think too, believing in yourself. When you believe in yourself and you believe in the mission that you're trying to accomplish, you'll figure it out. I read something the other day. Howard Schultz, who started Starbucks, it was like 250 banks turned him down.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like he obviously believed in what he was going to do, and he just figured it out. Like he just never stopped. So I think that's the same thing. It's like no matter what the circumstances, whether you're taking one man's failure and turning it into success, or you're going to 500 banks before you get a yes. It's like when you believe in yourself and you know how to execute,
it's persistence.
There's a way to get
And
it done.
I have to imagine that with the show and you and your business partner going into this club and pretty much having a deadline to come up with money you didn't have. It had to be a crazy couple of weeks and months of going all in to make it work.
At the same time, you're burning the ships, and you're like, there's no other option than to make this work. You know what I mean? If you have a loan and you're like, I can skip a payment. There's no skipping a payment if you do a deal like that.
Yep.
And you got to have confidence in yourself. I mean, I remember walking hours on the boulevard, going to every hotel, talking to every concierge, doing so much work, to get the word out that we were there and an option for kids. I mean, dude, you're on vacation in Myrtle Beach. You got 2 kids. It's the best babysitter in the world. 2 kids, $10. Mom and dad can go do whatever they want for 5 hours. You can't have somebody watch your kids at home for that. So
true.
And that's what you just said is the part that I love that people don't see is you could easily spin this as like, oh yeah, like after radio, opened a nightclub, went great. But it's like, took a huge risk, but with that risk was followed by action of so many people let their pride get in the way or just laziness get in the way of they go and open a business and you burn the ship. So it's like, man, you're out handing out flyers on the boulevard 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day.
Every day.
Where you've already had success. A lot of people look at your life already and see success, but you humble yourself and you say, hey, I don't care what it takes. I'm going to go out and I'll hand a flyer to every person in Myrtle Beach.
And that's the thing with every business I've been in, like, when we're building, or doing, I'm in there with the $8 an hour worker side by side with
100%.
him, man. And like, I'm not watching or checking a couple times a day. I'm in there sweating, painting, doing everything it can because I'm the only one who can control that. That guy at $8 an hour is not going to work as hard as you are because he's not vested.
Yeah.
And he doesn't get the reward in the end.
Right.
You're right.
Yeah, anyone who thinks that their employee, if you're an entrepreneur and you think your employee should work as hard or harder than you, you're mistaken.
No, absolutely not.
They shouldn't.
Just remember when you were an $8 employee. Dude, my first job was $2.85 an hour. Like,
you're out of my league for that one. I think my first one I was like at 7 something.
Yeah,
minimum wage should come pretty far.
Pirate, so making tips.
So you do Karma and you have a lot of success with that, and then what kind of transpires after that. Let's get into you go from there, had a lot of success, shut it down while it was still successful, basically.
No, I left like 4 years ago, but when with the success of Karma, we ended up getting Tequila Mockingbird down in Myrtle's Inlet, and then we had that for a little while, and we're like, there's so many bars in Myrtle's Inlet, let's do something different. We did a comedy night there and it killed. And I was like, you know what? Comedy might work. So then we turned Tequila Mockingbird into Stand Up Carolina. And, that's how the whole comedy thing launched. And it was just tough, man. It was tough getting people in there. But again, I just worked hard. I even though we had money from Karma to do that one, we were hemorrhaging money and it wasn't the success. And we're like, everything we touch is going to be gold. And it wasn't. Tequila Mockingbird made nothing. It was at a loss, and then we switched it to Stand Up Carolina, and it kind of broke even, and then, it was just years of that and just frustration, and the lease was up, and we're like, all right, we're done for now. and we put it on pause. And then a couple of years, just kept going with Karma. We opened another Karma in Hilton Head, and again, another failure. We're like, oh, Karma's a cookie cutter thing, and we had a lot of interest. But the thing is Hilton Head was a different animal than Myrtle Beach. You know what I mean? Like there, it's almost like little resort areas that people go in and they just don't come out. And it wasn't like they're walking by and seeing the club like down here. So we had that for 2 years, and we're just like, hey, it's not worth it, because the local kids, honestly, I mean, they're rich. They would just go on the beach and drink with their friends, and like, they didn't come. So they came, checked it out, and they're like, nah, I can't drink here. So too many rules, and it just failed. But we tried, and it was a beautiful club, and it was awesome. And then we were kind of just in limbo for a while, just had Karma, and then we're like, what if the comedy club was at Broadway? And then the opportunity came up, and Stool Pigeons was going out, and then I was like, all right, I can do this. And it was all against all odds. Like, Burroughs and Chapin doesn't like to do little mom and pop things in there, especially on the big entertainment side. It's more like corporation stuff, like the big Crocodile Rocks or the big,
Well, you look at it now, Hard Rock, Dave and Buster's.
And that's so crazy. It's like, I built something that's right next to Dave and Buster's, and to me, that was like the pinnacle of success. I was like, dude, I made it to Broadway. And we did it, and it was such a rush, and it was hard, and we went so over budget on everything, because like at Stool Pigeons, they were just like pouring chicken grease down the thing, so we had to cut out the floor and replace like 18 feet of the actual main line, and it was just horrible. Like, we just kept every stumbling block that possible, and I think we ended up going like $250,000 over, on the rebuild, and because the original plans had a whole upper floor, and with a staircase outside and a beer garden and all that. We just ran out of money, so we were there, and then just had some staffing problems, and but it did do better, because of the location. But it was around that time I was just like, I'm done. I was like, the stress of it, I don't like it, having to pull money out of my personal account to be able to pay the dishwasher because we're so low that week, or people didn't come see comedy. And it's getting tough, man. I mean, you can watch the best comedians in the world on Netflix now. Why go?
Couch, yeah.
Why go? Why pay the 2-drink minimum, and why, pay the ticket price when, you can just Kevin Hart, boom, Yeah. So it was around that time my wife's like, you know what, just go back to doing what you love. And I was like, there's no money in it. I tried it with Myrtle Vegas. I failed. I was like, I'm not going to be able to do this. And she's like, you'll be happy though. She's like, we're not making money now. We're scraping now. And that's the whole thing, is everybody thinks you're so, I had a nightclub on Ocean Boulevard, and I had a club at Broadway, and we were scraping. Yeah. Like, you guys know it's hard.
Oh, for sure. People that I know look at this, and it's easy to do math. Mm-hmm. How many meals you do? You tell them, and they're like, you can kind of almost see the numbers in their head, and it's like, you must be rich. And it's like, yeah, you don't see the overhead every month, or what, especially starting up.
That
like
broccoli costs money. Like they don't.
Everything costs. Those lights, that air conditioning.
The funniest thing is my daughter Taylor worked at the bar at Karma, and she goes, how much did Lisa used to make, my older daughter, I was like, I don't know, she make like $50-$60 a night in tips. And she's like, I'm going to make way more than that. And I was like, why? She's like, I'll sell so many drinks. I was like, you don't get to keep the cost of the drink. Like she thought anything she sold, she got to keep.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, you just don't. Even with us going into this, it's like you're saying you guys went over budget. Man, I came up with this whole business plan, and it was good. And even when we launched, it was close, but just
never.
Just
add. No matter what you figure, add a lot of money to it.
I always say
add 20%,
double it, triple it. Like, and even as you grow, we've learned so much too. We're talking before we got live with this right now, but it's like when we first started out, there's also points in business. Breaking points as far as if you have 3 employees and you're doing X amount of business and your profits here, well, you scale to 10 employees. Now that line is shifting. So it's almost, we talk a lot about how big would we want to take this? If you can make $1 million in revenue, but your profit's only $100,000 versus making $500,000 in revenue, but your profit's $85,000. It's like, what point is it a better fit? Or even just looking at the value of your life and how much time do you have to put in?
I mean, I even got that thing from HTC the other day, the co-op where they give you like how much they made and everything. I forgot. I mean, roughly it was like 100 million, something like that or something. But the cost of programming is like 65 million. And then you think about all the employees they have, all the guys on the trucks and all that. Like, I think their profit was only like $1 million after all that.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
You know?
So diving back in, I want to pick up on something that you said. So your wife comes to you and she says, I just want you to be happy. I want you to do something that you love.
Yeah.
Who cares if there's no money in it? And I think a lot of people misunderstand. They equate success and money, and it's
really
not true.
Yeah, it's not true.
When you become successful, when you're doing something you love or you're passionate about, a lot of times money will follow.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not always the reason that you do it. So you leave the comedy club and now you dive into what you love and you get back into voice.
I went and the thing is like I always did production. I never did voice, but I knew I could do it. And I just kind of, I was like, oh my God, this isn't going to work. But I was like, I'll try it. I'll dip my toe. And it's weird because even though it was my true passion, like I showed so much balls with the Burroughs and Chapin deal and the Carmen deal. And I had all this like gumption and what do you call it? But when it came back full circle to me, I was scared, bro. Like I was like, because there's no, oh, the business failed. This one would be, oh, I failed. And that was such a hard pill to swallow. But, I was like, you know what? I'll give it a shot. I'll try it. I'll dip my toe in the water. And honestly, probably the first thing in 30 years that I didn't go like, running into the fire like a juggernaut. Like, I mean, I was scared, and so, it's a whole different game to try to chase your dream when you have kids' mouths to feed and a wife to, take care of and all that stuff. So it's almost more courageous, the older you get.
For sure.
But
100%.
it doesn't mean that you shouldn't try. And so at the time I still kept working on the other stuff, but I started slowly, working on that. And the first month I was like, I got a job, man. I got, this company paid me $200 to read this thing. And I was like, the next month I made $400. I'm like, okay, maybe, and then I started putting demos together and starting, researching actually more about voice acting. Because that's the whole thing is you don't have to go to college. You just got to know what you're doing. So then by the third month, I think I was making maybe $1,000 a month. And I'm like, all right, that's $12,000 a year. And so then I started reinvesting some of that money into training. So I started training with some of the best voiceover coaches in LA. I got a promo coach for doing network promo. I learned what network promo was. I started like really getting into actual thing because voice acting is extremely hard. It's harder than regular acting in many ways because, if I'm trying to emit emotion, you can't see me. You can't see a tear rolling down my face. You got to hear it, and so it's like being deliberate in your speech and it's so much more than just your voice. Like it really is. Like you got to be able to be like Disney Cruise Line. And then the next thing be like, this child is alone. You know what I mean? You got to go the full gamut of emotions. So I had to learn how to do that. It's not just every commercial, this Sunday, like,
Right.
which is what people think it is. And
unless you're doing the NFL.
Yeah. So the whole thing, well, it's such a difference. Like the best way I can explain what I do when people ask me and they don't get it is like next time you're watching TV commercials on TV, close your eyes and don't watch any of the visuals at all and listen. And you hear the acting of it. You know what I mean? It's not the typical radio of, coming up right after this, like that's not what they want. And you can tell the difference. Like, a Chevy truck commercial is like Chevy trucks driving through mud, but you get a Mercedes, they're going for that, the Mercedes sales event ending now. You know what I mean? Like it's such a different thing. And you don't realize that in the world full of that. So, it was a couple months in, I was investing in myself. I was working out a modified closet with some egg crate on the wall. Like, I didn't have a lot of money.
Kind of like our ghetto office right now.
It's good.
We got some egg crate on the wall.
It's good. It sounds good in here. But yeah, and I just did that over that first year, made money, reinvested in it, better equipment, boom, built myself up to the pro level. And then things started to really take off, which was amazing. So by that time I left the comedy club.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I got out. It just wasn't my thing anymore. It took me a year. And then 2 years after that, I ended up leaving Karma for good, which was crazy. because that was the main thing for such a long time. And then, ever since, I've been completely independent. And, I started working with production companies, marketing myself, getting better demos. And the jobs just kept getting bigger and bigger. And now 4 years later, I make more money hands down than I ever did owning those two places.
And you're at home, probably a lot of time freedom.
Some days I don't put on pants, man. I just
you can work with no pants.
He's actually not wearing any pants right now.
I'm currently in 47 countries.
It's nuts.
And you're doing stuff for like Fox and like
I'm the voice
huge
of the
names.
Fox network in Asia. I do all their programming, Simpsons. And the cool thing over there is there's not channels like AMC. So like Walking Dead's on Fox over there. So I just did the Titan games with
The Rock.
The Rock, yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. So hearing that, there's two things I want to point out. The first thing is when you find something that you hit a point, right? You hit a point where you want to see that change. And there's so much value in what you said. Hey, you stayed at the comedy club. You stayed with your prior commitments. You were taking in revenue to put food on the table. And part-time, you started this journey. And we used to talk about all the time with direct sales. It's like, hey, work full-time at your job and part-time at your passion. That's kind of what we
I love one
pitched.
of the things Arnold Schwarzenegger says. He's like, just sleep less. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but it's like so many people out there that, I don't have time, but they spend 4 hours a night watching Netflix. And it's like, hey, you got to a point where you weren't satisfied and you did something about it.
And that's the whole thing is like, don't bury your sorrow in Candy Crush or, some stupid app. Like, get off your ass and go do it. You know what I mean?
And it took time. You said 4 years later, which now looking back, I know for us, we're 2 years into our business. And it's like, man, how do we even get here? But it's like, how you got here was just that little bit every day.
And it's hard to, especially in the voiceover business, like there's some people that are like, oh my God, how did you get, you're the voice of a major network in 4 years? There's guys that have been doing it for 20 years. I'm like, you're not going to outwork me. Like that's the whole thing. And I've had friends who were in radio background and they see my success and they're like, I want to do what you do. And I'll take time. I'll plant the seed and I'll say to them, you know what? 2 years later, they don't have anything because they didn't put in the time that I did.
And you were telling us too, before we started, you're doing upwards of like 30 commercials a day.
7 days a week. Yeah.
Yeah, that's insane.
And the great thing about the job is technically I can work anywhere there's a internet connection. So like a year ago, we went on vacation for like 10 days in the Dominican Republic, which is, I made it through.
Yeah, it's a tough time to go there now.
But like I don't like just sitting on the beach and just baking and covered in sand. So my wife would go in the morning with her friend, and like I just stayed and worked 2-3 hours in the morning. I made $3,000 that week while on vacation.
That's awesome.
And I only worked 2 or 3 hours a day.
Yeah, that's what's great about with technology now. And it's like, even with our podcast, like I can literally pick up this setup and we can go anywhere. To do the show.
Yeah.
Which is so cool.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to pull from that story too was, I think it's a crucial point where you said you started making money, but then you started investing it back.
Yeah.
I think that's where a lot of people miss too, is they don't love their job or whatever the situation is. They start something else. They start to see success, and maybe they quit that job too early, or they take that money and think, oh, I'm rich. I made $1,000. I can spend it. You stayed in your two businesses, so just working a ton. And then not only did you start to make that money, but you're putting it right back into the business.
You had to put it back in.
And it took 2 or 3 years until you walked away from your other businesses?
2 or 3 years, and there was a ton of setbacks, bro.
For sure.
I mean, when I finally got rolling into like year 2.5, we had rented a river house, and I had a full studio. Like my dream studio was built downstairs. We got hit with that 100-year flood. Like my whole studio was underwater for 18 days. Like when it started to clear out, I had fish swimming in my vocal booth. Like, and a lot of people would have quit.
Sure.
I just tore that shit down and just
started over. And you built your new studio, right?
No, for the next 6 months, I worked out of a cardboard box that was stuffed with egg crate. What do you call it? Stuff.
Yeah.
I had no fancy booth. I had no nothing. I recorded a Budweiser commercial in that cardboard box, and they didn't know. And it's just like having the confidence that I could pull it off. I could make it sound good enough to where they wouldn't know that anything happened, because if they knew my studio was destroyed, they weren't going to hire me anymore. And then I lost the money. So like we did that. And then, we moved to the farmhouse, which was amazing. I had a whole room that was my studio. I hired a guy from LA to design the acoustics of it. And then Michelle's mom passed away. like a year and a half ago, and she left us the house, and you know, the house wasn't in very good shape, and we couldn't hang on to both houses, so I remodeled the whole house, her mom's whole house, in 14 weeks with the help of a couple friends. You know, because if you're not planning on doing a full house remodel, you don't have the cash just sitting there to do it. So
Right.
just maxed out every credit card, did it, and for the last year or a year of that time, I worked out of a modified walk-in closet. Again, I lost my studio, and then so last summer I said, all right, I'm going to build my dream studio. So I actually built the whole building last year myself, sweating in the heat. And I built a 16 by 12 building, 10-foot ceilings. You know, it really is like state of the art in every way. And I built the whole thing myself, electrical, HVAC, everything. And like the whole thing about going to college, I watch YouTube, man. Like
I
it
was
will
gonna
tell
say,
you how to do anything.
I didn't hear carpentry in the story. Like, how?
Well, actually, I do woodworking as a hobby, like to get away from the technical end
Sure.
of things. But
It's incredible.
So let's get into that. So you're crushing it in the voice field. You're doing all these crazy deals, and then on the side, you just started a new woodworking business, which I've seen your stuff. It's phenomenal.
Thank
looking.
you, man. I've always loved woodworking. There's something just like about the technical preciseness of it and stuff that I just totally enjoy. Like,
I was watching somebody too. I follow some guys that are like huge YouTubers, and they love like everything they do is digital. But there's two guys, and they both are like leather. They make things out of leather,
Yep.
like leathersmiths. And they said it's just such a nice transition from digital to analog.
it's such a maker movement now, which I think is kind of cool. Like people want to get. I just think it's innately human that you want to do things with your hands.
Sure.
Like we're built that way, you know.
Sure.
And you know everything I do all day is so technical and talking and stuff like that. Like I just like to build. I've always liked to build. And you know, it's always been my dream to have like a shop and do a whole thing. So a couple of years ago, we started just doing like the farmers market and stuff. Me and my wife, she would paint the signs, and I would do like other things. And then it just got more and more elaborate, you know, over time. And so I started a wood company called What Would We Do? Like wood, WOOD. And
oh, that's awesome.
and it built to the point where, like, I mean, some ladies were driving from Charleston to buy entranceway tables from me for like $1,500. And, you know, I did one lady, she had a big round, like 48-inch kitchen table, and it was her great grandmother's. And she wanted me to turn it into a farm table. And I was like, how am I going to do this? It's only that big.
Yeah.
So I cut it into 6-inch strips and then alternated oak and maple all the way through the whole table and made it like a Joanna Gaines, like, you know, farm table. And one of the best things was she sent me, it was months later, and just out of nowhere, she sent me a text of her Thanksgiving table decorated. And she's like,
Awesome.
now my family can, you know, have this for generations to come, which was great, you know?
Yeah, that's incredible. One thing to ask is, so I hear you talking about your wife. What's just some advice? You know, I've been married for 3 years now. Jeff's married. You're married. You know, it definitely is. Like you said, it's certainly harder. If you're 18 to 25 with no spouse or serious girlfriend or anyone to depend on you or kids, it is much easier. You may not think it at 18,
No.
but it's way easier when you have no responsibility. The older you get, definitely the more difficult it gets and the more responsibility you have. How have you found balance is such a hard word, because it's like you could go down a rabbit hole of that. But obviously you've had to go all in at certain times. But how can you fuel the flame on the business pursuit you have and your marriage and your family?
You gotta be a team. Like it can't be one person showboating in the end zone and the other person just sitting on the sideline. I'm learning
that's
that
good.
more now. Like I made mistakes with my wife 100%. Like the first couple of years of us getting together, I mean, she just followed me around, you know, hey, I'm building this club. Hey, I'm doing this, you know, come on, come along.
Sure.
And she worked at every business that I did, not as an owner, as a worker. And, you know, she put in her time, and I don't think I noticed that as much as I should have,
Sure.
you know, and everything I have now is because of her pushing me. I would have never went back to voiceover if she never said that to me. You know, she looked at me, saw I was suffering, and she's like, hey, you know, it was very close to the just win Rocky, you know, like Adrian telling Rocky, you know, and then I was like, I felt the fire again. I was like, din, 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 din. You got copyright on that or no?
No, we're good. We're good.
So it was that.
This episode is not
But
sponsored.
then at the same time, like as a wife or as a husband supporting the other person, don't shoot down their ideas. It could be something like you know, if I didn't follow her advice, we would not be in the situation we are in right now.
Sure.
We wouldn't have been able to pull back from all the things that we've faced the last couple of years. So, you know, be a supportive partner. And at the same time, you know, don't make the mistake like I did when I was just building businesses and feeling high and mighty because the one just forget that she's in tow. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't fair for me to make her in tow. I should have had her run with me instead of run behind me, you know, and I know that's a mistake I made, you know, 100%. So, you know, and the thing is now she's found her wings. Like, she's a very well-established photographer now. She does weddings and all sorts of stuff. She's an incredible artist with what we do. You know, she doesn't have to work. She's working with her friend at this flower shop just because she loves being creative there. It's not about money.
Yeah.
She loves what she does. And I think that's, at the end of the day, if you're on the fence, I think you need to take a piece of paper, write it down. And if money was not an issue, write down 5 or 10 things that you would just love to wake up every day, even if you didn't need money to live, you know, write 5 or 10 things that would be your absolute dream to do every single day, and you'd be happy doing it. And then just find a way to monetize it somehow. You know, if you're a fisherman, like, make fishing lures or something, like, you know what I mean? Like, pick something even close to it, and then you're still in the field. And like, I love what I do every day. Every day's different. You know, I wake up, and the thing is, don't believe anything you believe on the internet, because I'm like Dr. Mike Stevens trying to sell you, you know, erection pills or like, you know, and I have no medical degree. I'm the voice of the #2 selling fitness app on iTunes. And obviously I got a little ways to go myself, but I'm like, come on, one more rep, you know? So
that's awesome.
Yeah. But at the same time it's funny how everything falls in place once you're happy. You know, when I had the businesses and all that stuff, I was 415 pounds. And now I've lost 140 pounds, man.
That's awesome.
Like, in a
Now,
lot
we
of
could do a whole nother podcast on just the weight loss
I'm just
journey.
like, but that thing, and you find other obstacles along the way. Like, you know, I haven't told anybody this. I'm going to tell you guys that I just found out like 2 months ago, I have autism. It was undiagnosed my whole life. I have Asperger's and ADHD. And then they had me tested because they were like, it's an enigma. You don't seem like you have any of it. I'm a certified genius. I did the IQ test, and I'm like,
I knew it.
I'm like 150 something, you know, and they just said, you know, I'm so intelligent that it covers up a lot of the aspects of the Asperger's. But at the same time, you know, the way she explained it, it's amazing. She's like, the things that make you so exceptional are the things that hold you back. And so I've been going to counseling and dealing with that. So, you know, the other thing I can tell people is, yeah, it looks like I got all my stuff together. You know, on Facebook, everybody has all their stuff together. You don't see me crying in counseling, you know, because I'm trying to deal with this mental thing. You don't see me, you know, head down at the end of the day because I auditioned for 50 things and they told me no. You see that I voiced Titan Games for Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, or you see that I did a Budweiser commercial. So don't let other people's success online even gauge you in any sort of way.
Absolutely.
If anything, if you're trying to build something other than marketing, get off social media. Don't even look at it. Do your own thing.
Yeah.
Put your head down and run.
For sure.
That's great advice. I got off when I was having that transition. I got completely off social media. I was doing commercial insurance. I wasn't satisfied, but I was like, looking at what other people are doing is just going to confuse me. It's going to make me even more unsatisfied. So I got off, and if it wasn't for our business now, I probably would have stayed off. But I have disengaged so much more from that because, like you're saying, again, it's just highlight reels. You're seeing everyone's perfect 30 seconds of that month. And it's just not the true world. Even with our business, people, you know, we could make it look like, oh, we're killing it, but they don't see the early mornings, the long nights, the tears, the stress. There's so much that comes with it, which, again, part of the deal. We love the grind of that.
I think your phone, if it was on live feed all day long, I don't think social media would exist. Like, because people would be like, this is a depressing hellhole. Let's get out of here. You know what I mean? Because everybody's got everybody. The richest guy in the world. And like you said earlier, it's not money. Like,
right. Yeah. Success boils down to happiness.
It's happiness.
And if you're lucky enough to do what you love to do, a lot of times the money will follow. But if it doesn't, and I think this is a great point for people, wouldn't it be more satisfying to do what you love every day and make 40 grand, 50 grand a year and be able to live a comfortable life and support your family versus make $80,000 to $100,000 a year being miserable.
Exactly.
And I think a lot of people don't realize that. And I think a lot of people just equate, man, I got to make the money. But once you start making more money, typically most people start spending more money. And so you're just in that same pattern. You're just at a different level now. So I think if you're chasing your goals and your dreams, like, shoot, if you can go make 40 grand, 50 grand doing what you love, being happy, like, that's it, man. You've won.
And the whole thing is, if you want to make less money, move to where it's cheaper to live.
Come to Myrtle Beach.
Sure. you got options. You know, one of my favorite quotes, and it's gross, but I absolutely love it, is like, no matter how much money you have, everyone gets diarrhea. Yeah. And I'm like, that is fantastic, because like, there's nothing more humiliating or painful than that. Yeah. It was like, you got billions of dollars, man, you still get diarrhea.
Yeah. And two, I think going along with everybody has this, one thing that I've tried to focus on and work with is, and I think you almost said it before, but the happiness is already there.
Yeah.
There's like this little cartoon. I think it was like Winnie the Pooh or something. It's like, he's got a jar of happiness. Like, where'd you find that? And it was like, I had it already, or something along those lines. But it's so true. It's like, it's a choice. Your actions are definitely going to help dictate whether that choice can rise to the top.
And you got to feel it. You got to look for happiness in yourself.
You've got to.
You can't get it from anybody else. No matter how much you love your wife or husband or anything, it's not their job to make you happy. You know, it's your job to make you happy. Yeah. You know, and I think so many people are just depressed, and they're doing things that they don't want to do. It doesn't feel right. You know, like, right and wrong. Like, you can know when you're getting up every day and you're just like, oh, like, that's not the life you should be having, man. You get one.
They're letting other people's opinions dictate their actions, and they're thinking, man, I hate doing this, but if I quit, I'd let this person or this person down. But the reality is, until you can make yourself happy, you know, your lack of happiness and fulfillment is just going to extend into the people you care about.
Exactly.
The more, if you can take care of yourself, then you can take care of those people in such a better way.
Yep.
That's so good. You want to end with the last question we ask everyone?
Yeah, let's wrap it up.
You want me to go for it? I'll go for it. So the question we ask everybody on the show so far is, what if, hence the title of the podcast there, what if you had the opportunity to share one piece of advice that every single person in the world would hear? What would that piece of advice be?
That's tough.
We always drop it on people, and they're always like, It's like, maybe we should give people the opportunity to think about this.
Think about it.
No.
Because it's such a tough question. You could think on that for a while.
I think you got to do what you're called to do. Like, I think that, you know what I mean? Like, I think everybody has a purpose. Everybody has, you know, certain things that they're drawn to. Like, I mean, you're attracted to a certain type of person, or there's just natural things that you feel are right. And you know deep down in your heart if you're in that wrong spot. And I'm not saying cut it and get rid of it, but if you're feeling that, you need to explore what the right thing is, and then take your time to work your way towards it. You know, you don't have to go burning bridges and like, quit, I'm out, you know, and flip the table. But understand, you know, if a plate's hot, you take your hand off it, you know? So why, if you're feeling that inside, why would you just continue to keep your hand on the plate? You wouldn't. You'd either find a way to get it off there or something. So you need to really research that feeling, you know, and it changes as you get older. I want things now, like, literally, like, building my shop now is one of the happiest things. You know, I could be getting a classic car. I could be getting a fancy truck. I could get anything. I don't want that. I want to tinker like an old man and whittle wood, man. And like, that's like a life goal. And like, to someone my age, it kind of looks silly, you know, but I love it, you know? So, and I knew I needed it. So then I worked my way towards it, you know? And that's what you got to do is, if you're feeling that, if you got that inside you and you're like, this isn't it for me, find out what it is, and then find a way to monetize it and do everything you can to work towards it. You know, I think that's the best way to do it.
Sure. And notice the explore aspect. It's like, if you don't know what it is, you know, it's easy to know what's not.
Because there's bad ideas too. Like, I mean, just because you come up with an idea, hey, I'm going to make a flying cufflink. All right, well, what are some other options too? You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying it's bad. Flying cufflink could work. But literally, like, just explore multiple options, and then which one just sparks joy in you, and you're like, yes, that's it.
Don't give up till you find it.
Don't.
That's it.
I think it continues through life. I don't think it ever stops.
So true. Well, that is so awesome, and man, it's great to see you. It was great to have you on the podcast. And man, such a good one. These go by so fast. But hey, thanks again for listening to the What If audio experience. This was episode 5, and it was a great one. Hey, if you haven't had a chance to leave us a comment or a review on iTunes, we would greatly appreciate it. It means the world to us. Thanks so much for listening, and get ready for another amazing episode next week.
Bye for now.
Bye.